Hi everyone, this is Craig Zelzer from PCDN back with our latest Social Change Career Podcast live stream. The topic for today is building a future-proof career as a changemaker. You can say you heard it here first. This is episode 8 of season 13, and we're here with Mentor Dida. For people who have not participated in the podcast before the live stream, it generally goes about 50 minutes. We really enjoy hearing from people in the live stream. So at any point, feel free to post, particularly in LinkedIn, where you're watching from and a sentence or two about your interests, and of course, questions and comments. This will be converted to one of 170 episodes of the Social Change Career podcast by this Friday. And so you can check them out on PCN Global or any podcasting platform. Three quick requests before we get started. If you like the podcast, which hopefully you do, please consider rating and sharing it. That's the number one thing you can do for any podcaster. So from one podcaster to listener, please take 10 seconds, 15 seconds, rate it on whatever your platform is. Share it. Please follow Mentor on LinkedIn and check out PCN. Consider subscribing to our weekly newsletter. So Mentor is a changemaker and educator dedicated to empowering individuals to create lasting impact. This is a great title. I don't know how many people in the world have this, but as the Global Futurist in Residence, no pressure, at Arizona State University's College of Global Futures, he connects changemakers with opportunities to address global challenges through careers in fields like sustainability and innovation in society. He previously scaled the Spiritual Changemakers Initiative globally at Ashoka, which, if people don't know, is one of the world's leading social entrepreneur organizations. Been around since 82, I think, or 84. Please check them out. Led Youth Venture and co-founded Changemaker Allies, which focuses on creating transformative learning spaces. Mentor and I met many years ago in person, I think at Ashoka or somewhere in DC. I'm based in Medellin, Colombia. Mentor is based in Pristina, Kosovo. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to share your rich wisdom. And to get started off with, like, how in the world did you wind up let me just how in the world did you wind up with this current, you have multiple roles, like a lot of change makers. We don't like to be in boxes, but how in the world did you become a futurist in residence, and what does that mean?
Correct. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's been so long that we've been seeing virtually each other, and finally we're getting to connect more and explore. That's a really good question. So first, I think what people need to know about my role as a global futurist in residence at Arizona State University College of Global Futures. There's so many futures, right? Uh, I was an alum of Arizona State University, and Craig, when I applied to colleges, I came from Kosovo to United States. I was an exchange student in high school. Then I transferred to community college because that was the only affordable option for me. And then after community college, no university accepted me except Arizona State University. So they gave me a chance. And that's not just by accidentally, but ASU does that by design. They're actually one of the last 10 years, according to US report, is that they have been the number one in innovation. And a big part of it is their valuing value of including rather than excluding. And they gave me a chance. And when I went there, initially, I wanted to be an engineer because my dad was an engineer. And I said, okay, I'm going to be an engineer. But then I went there and I saw the whole campus mission and vision was about creating change in the world. And when I got to feel that in my heart, I said, oh my goodness, I want to actually also create change in the world. So then I told my parents and I said, hey, I don't want to be an engineer anymore. I want to create change in the world. And it's like, what the hell? No. You go back to something that is safe, something that is there. So I had to finish the engineering degree, but then on the side, I started change-making efforts. And those change-making efforts led me to actually be the commencement speaker at the college. So I started really thriving. I started an organization. I did one more thing there. And then after college, I got to join Ashoka, where I was facilitating and doing all these workshops for change makers everywhere. And as of recently, the College of Global Futures has this vision of creating the university of the future, very much like building it. What is the future that we want? and what do we need to do today to actually bring that future. And to do that, they needed a little bit of help of someone who is living this spirit of a change maker, because those majors like in sustainability or innovation in society, it is a bit hard to like to explain to parents why a degree in sustainability is actually a very good career choice, or why being a change maker and choosing a degree like innovation in society is actually very much needed, because the world needs those type of people, and AI and all these things is taking over very much of those repeated jobs that are the same patterns and stuff like that. So that's where they enlisted me to support them into making the case to parents, building partnerships between changemaker organizations and the college, and moving forward that way. So long story, and the name of the title, it's complex. We're trying to figure out a better one. Initially was just a fellow. Then we're like, is it a fellow? Is it a global futurist? What the hell are we doing? So we finally landed somewhere, and that's been the story of my life. Very hard with titles, because even my name is Mentor,
Yeah. Yes, it is one of the, I mean, in Albanian, what does mentor mean?
Mentor means very much the same
Okay.
as in others, but I am not named after the title. I'm named after a person
Okay.
who was mentor, and he
Okay.
was in ancient Greece. He was a soldier who took care of Odysseus' kids, and he was a great role model. So I'm named after him,
Okay.
and the title comes after because
Okay.
of
Yeah. So your given name in some ways helped influence maybe your career choices.
Oh, that's a big philosophical question. I like it.
You'd have to ask your family when they picked this name, was there any inkling, the person it represented in history? But so just going back, if you think back to your teenage years in Kosovo, did you aspire to be an engineer, or did you aspire to be a doctor, or how did you go from Kosovo to engineering to really just winding up in this entire change making world? Like, was it because you went to ASU, or you already were doing things, or you had mentors?
Well, that it's really good question, Craig. And for me, for those of you who might not know, I grew up during the war in Kosovo. So literally, when my mom was giving birth to me, she was not allowed to go to the hospital, because they said we don't allow Albanians in this hospital. So she had to travel 60 miles just to give birth to me. So I was literally born into injustice, and that turned into a full scale ethnic cleansing process, and that drove us out of our homes, and I was a refugee for some time. So I grew up with this sense of realness of what injustice means and looks like. And ever since a kid, I had this desire that, I want a world with more people who are creating change and good, and less violence, and less all these type of things that are happening in the world right now and before. So that was my mission. Engineering was because I never thought that a college degree can be something about change making. Like that, like what kind of job do you get? So I did, that wasn't in my sphere of influence. And the reason why I chose engineering is, one, my dad was a professor of engineering, so I thought, oh, I'm good with math and physics, I can do that. But the second thing was that Kosovo needed help with energy. I grew up literally with 2 hours with electricity, 4 without, 2 with, 4 without, and growing up like that, I felt like I'm going to dedicate my time and energy to solve this issue of energy. But then with time, I realized that that issue is really big. The government is also taking care of it, and I wanted to get alternative energies to actually make clean air. So, but when I joined to college, I realized that my job was not to design better solar panels. My job was to actually remind people the importance of finding their power and dedicating their time to create change in the world. And that's how I stepped into that role. And the college really helped me put a name to it. So that was really helpful in that way.
So Two things here. I was in Kosovo in '99. I lived in Bosnia and spent a lot of time, lived in Hungary for years. And we did have friends who lived, they're working for OSC recently, working, in Kosovo. And is it, not going to talk too much about engineering and energy, but they did say that a lot of the city is still coal powered. Is that still true? Or like, if you think about sustainable energy, what percentage of Kosovo's, let's say, heating or resources are coming from sustainable solutions, and is coal still a large source of heating for the city of Pristina?
Oh yeah, heating, electricity, coal is a big one. We have a coal power plant, and that's unfortunately the main one. But we're increasing our capacities, the big
Mhm.
time. Big time. The government is doing a great job. The private sector, the international community supporting with that. But it's also, not to get too much into the
Yeah.
technicalities, but it's also a bit unfair sometimes, the to demand countries that are just being built and just started literally in
Mhm.
2008 to say, like, you need clean energy and all these things when we don't have the basics. So there was this process of trying to figure out energy security for some time, and that remains to be one of the big issues, because there's tensions between, like, hey, let's move all green, and let's keep the country going, type of thing.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we live in Colombia. My wife is Colombian, and I mean, the U.S. is the largest producer of fossil fuels in the world. So it is. There's so many paradoxes here, but we're not going to get into the COP talks. Just want to welcome a few people. So we have people from South Sudan, from Qatar, from Europe, from all over. Please keep letting us know your questions and comments. Cole Hoover's here. Ali is here. I think was your colleague at Ashoka, and then please put your comments, especially your questions, and let us know about your work. So one question, and how in the world, because I taught more at the graduate level, but I had lots of students from all over the world who would come to study in the U.S., and a certain percentage would be fortunate enough to translate their studies, get OPT, and then translate it to residency, or at least an H-1B work visa. So how in the world did you go from undergrad to landing a job at Ashoka, and what were the skills you developed within university, either within academic settings or just your own organizing? And what was it like to work for one of the world's leading social entrepreneur organizations?
Oh, that's a great question, and luck has to do a little bit something with it. But what I also tell students today is that it's important to really ask yourself, what is the world that you want to live in? What is the world that when you die you want to leave behind in? Like, so if we ask that question of that vision of the world, then we ask the question, so how do I want to contribute towards making that world happen? And I had answers to that. I spent a good amount of time to actually find those answers, and that was clear to me. So when I knew that I wanted more change makers in the world, then I started a nonprofit organization. I started a club. I did the movement in the campus. I did so many extracurricular things to actually learn and fail in that process, and that was really valuable to me, because I learned skills like public speaking. I learned team management and collaboration. I learned grant writing proposals. I read all these type of skills that otherwise is difficult without you putting them into action. And when at ASU we had the Clinton Global Initiative, and it was an incredible opportunity, especially for Kosovo. President Clinton is very special. There's a statue of him when you walk to Pristina, like he's greeting you, because he was the president that decided to support Kosovo. And I was part of that. And one of the sessions I signed up with was with this guy named Bill Drayton, and I only heard of him. I've heard of him. His name was around. Bill Drayton is the founder and CEO of Ashoka, and I was sitting in the session with him, and he's very wise and very quiet, very outspoken, very soft spoken. And he asked me, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I'm creating change. I have this organization and we're doing all these volunteering events to create this and that and that and that. And he tells me, you can give a person a fish, you can teach them how to fish, or you can change the fishing industry. And he said, in which level do you play? And to me, I was like, wow, that really blew my mind, because I started seeing like there's different levels of how I can have impact. And that was the first time I had that. So that left me really in awe after that interaction with him. And when time came to graduate, fortunately, I was getting some awards in college, and I was also getting some other job offers, but I just wanted to work at Ashoka. That felt to me that where my skills are at. I wanted to learn from Bill and Ashoka team, and the college actually nominated me to join, for them to consider. Once that nomination happened, there was 8 months of interviews. So it was a really tough interview process, because they asked questions like, you were born and then what? They want to know everything, so that you're a fit there. So after 8 months, I was in my last, like, okay, if they don't accept me, it's May already, I'm graduating in 2 weeks, I have to know. And then they made the decision that, come to DC, and that's how I moved to Ashoka. My degree was in engineering and the other one was in entrepreneurship. But why they hired me was not because of my grades and my degrees, but because of all this entrepreneurial experience of things that I failed and I've done. And that's the advice I give also to young students today, is that, hey, what is something you can do outside of the classroom that can help you build your skills and your confidence in leading the world that you want to create.
And so wonderful. And Lodu is just sharing. He loves that comment about what kind of world do you want to leave behind, or legacy. And I like the term legacy nugget. So to think a little bit about your time at Ashoka, can you summarize? You don't have to go through the whole history, but like, what was your favorite roles, and what things did you enjoy the most? And it is a business of change making, regardless if you're a nonprofit, for-profit, whatever sector. And what are the skills that you encourage others who want to work at this intersection of innovation and social impact, regardless of the sector? Like, what are the skills that you found most powerful or useful as you moved ahead in your career?
Wow, that's fantastic. At Ashoka, the most exciting thing for me, Greg, was to actually sit with really incredible thinkers. And that was just to understand impact in the deeper level. That was incredible. What it also taught me being there is it's a really humble moment, because I grew up with like, oh, here's a venture, here's another venture, and entrepreneurship, and I know things. And then I went to Ashoka and I realized, wow, there's so much I don't know. And I feel like that itself led me to have a really an open mind. Because when you say I don't know, you're willing to learn, you're willing to see, and you don't make assumptions about your stakeholders, you don't make assumptions about who you're serving. So you really bring a very curious mindset and an open mindset. That is the skill that you really need for this in one level. The other level is more like hard skills. It's I do feel that you need to have the ability to connect with people in a deeper level. Connect in a way that you become friends, connect in a way that you can have the desire to collectively create some change, to really be a people person in that way. And what does it take, without manipulation, to truly authentically be yourself, and then find those people around you who can do the same. So that's really important. So who you know, how they know you, how you can connect. And Greg, I'd love to also hear your input on this, because I do feel like you're a master connector, master weaver. What people can do to actually learn how to connect better with each other. I'd love to also hear your perspective on that as well.
I mean, it's not a podcast interviewing me, but I would just say the 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 number. I mean, there's lots of ways to go about change making, but transactional change making or relationship, which dominates in some parts of the world, not everywhere, but particularly in DC more than other places. The idea, if I came to you and say, mentor, oh, like X person, can you help me get this resource? That, I mean, it could work, but it's not relationship focused. And I think curiosity, humbleness, and just the desire to learn and collaborate is like so much more powerful. Just like, hey, you're doing really interesting stuff and the world is messed up, and maybe we can have a conversation and just see, learn. And I'm not asking you for money, a job, anything. And then like as you connect with people, and sometimes you don't connect, you have a coffee and that's it. But it's like as you connect with someone, it's almost like in your periphery, you're thinking about who else do I know who's just, there could be these natural connections or allyship or partnerships. And I think it's trying to do that amplification, but it's out of curiosity, connection, and a little bit of obsession. I don't want to say it's all wonderful, but I think it's like that desire to connect the change making world and also think beyond usual boundaries, and letting go of transactional networking, which obviously needs to happen, but when that's put at the center, I mean, I've done a lot of the bizarre dance in the change world. Like, oh, there's a project, let's do a proposal. You're going to team up with this person, like this organization. Like, there's no allyship. Part of it is the bizarreness of the business of change, and when it comes from that way, it's so much weirder. And when it comes to more authenticity and kind of anyway, but it's a much longer conversation. So what are some things, both thinking about Ashoka and change making allies and across your career? What are some things? Because there a lot of people have talked about this. There's almost right now, and my wife Catalina, we work together, and she says I drink too much of the Kool-Aid of this change making world, which I do, but I'm also critical. But like it's not all wonderful. And that what are some things for people looking to, again, regardless of nonprofit? I personally no longer differentiate between for-profit, nonprofit, foundation, startup. It's like there's good and bad everywhere, and just because an organization has a particular legal arrangement doesn't necessarily carry better value. That's my opinion. But what are some of the things like that you have found frustrating, not organization specific, about the industry? And I'd say the average age of our listeners 32 to 40, but we have younger people and older. So for people who are like, oh, I'm tired of building widgets or selling Kool-Aid. I want to do something that is contributing to change in the world. I mean, there's a lot of wonderful things, but what are some of the challenges of working in this industry, broadly speaking?
Mm. I think a big one that gets on my nerves sometimes is what I call intellectual masturbation. And what happens is that people are just sharing ideas and they love the ideas and they're just building them and the ideas are great and the ideas are this, but then so much of the work and most of the difficult part is at the execution. So I think we need to shift to actually more execution in proportion to thinking. Yes, of course, there's time to think, but also there's time to be on your feet. And that's where I feel like the power of facilitation is actually very much powerful, because if you have facilitated spaces that are transformative in action and in growth, then I feel like that is the intersection that is missing. Sometimes spaces there's power dynamics that are weird. Why does the CEO have more weight in their opinion or idea than someone who just started? Maybe if there's a proper space, yes, she might have more experience, but still you want to account for everybody. It's like, how do we unlock the collective wisdom? It's not a individual game, like you cannot have just one player and then be an all-star team. No, you need everybody to be involved. And in that process, what I find is that sometimes our egos are in the way. Egos in sense of like, this is mine, this is yours, this is who our organization is, and this is there, or hey, this is our funding, this is what we want to do with it, this is not your funding, and with this funding you have to do this exactly what we want. So if that is the approach, then it does feel like there's these silos that are kind of just bumping and not really a circle of collaboration for creating change. So I do feel like we lack in ways to effectively collaborate across boundaries beyond borders. How can we do that in a way that is honest? It's also sustainable, because funding is a big issue here. People are fighting for their salaries sometimes, or for their market share, and that collaboration for the good, then it's the secondary thing. And to challenge that, we do need a new way of seeing the world, new way of doing in the world, but also, more importantly, a new way of being in the world. So that's where I feel like are some of the challenges, that we don't address those layers. We address more conceptual things and system change, and not necessarily the ego-driven, the culture changes that we truly need.
And thinking about, we'll get to Arizona State, but thinking about your work at Changemaker Allies, if you had to break down, how much is business development, you and your colleagues, like either inbound or outbound? How much is like the incredible convening and learning? How much is like the reporting? And obviously it varies, but like, it's not all doing and planning and being with change making communities, because it takes resources, money, planning. So if you had to like break it down, and within your current role or how you divide it up with your colleagues, do you all equally do everything? Or, one person's more doing business development, one's more doing the planning, or
So Changemaker Allies, we use that word allies very purposefully, because an ally is someone who's walking with you, who's in the same level as you. Like we have an approach that we don't go to a partner and say, like, let me tell you how you do this, because that type of up down, we know you don't know model, I feel like it's outdated. So as allies, we try to actually walk with them, learn with them, and give them our skills and abilities that we have learned from our experiences on how we hold transformative space, whether it is learning, whether it is conferences, whether it is trainings, what meetings, anything. We can be there, your allies, to actually make that happen. So in one way, feels like that is how we approach externally. And Greg, has been the marketing approach is to actually find the people who are willing to walk with us like that, who are a bit crazy also, and who also see this world of possibilities, and really want to continue to evolve the way they hold spaces. So to find those people, and to actually have them to see us and our abilities and gifts, that feels like all of us are activated to find those people. So we're all in the same level as a team, and we're all trying to bring new business with new clients, new collaborations, and then together we're figuring out who does what and who does who. We have stayed away from traditional roles at the moment. We're also in the beginning, so who knows what happens as we scale, but that has been our learning right now.
So I'm going to bring in, thank you so much. I'm bringing a question from Lodu, who's from South Sudan, but in Uganda. What leadership advice would you offer to a visionary with a big heart to transform his or her community, but lacks the resources? So that could be both financial resources, or time, or let's say lack of reliable internet access, or just any, resources in general.
Lodu, that's a beautiful question, and thank you for asking, and for being in the community. Look, resources lack. That is true. Sometimes we do have that reality to face. But what I also find that sometimes lacks together with the resources is resourcefulness. And that is the ability to actually figure out ways to do it. Like, if you're really driven, maybe there's something you haven't tried yet. And that's where sometimes it feels, even in Kosovo, it was impossible for me to imagine coming to study in United States. My parents' combined income as teachers was 600 euros, which was 600 euros a month in United States to pay college. No way. It's just out of reach. But the resourcefulness was that, how can you get there? Well, maybe there's a US embassy, somebody who knows scholarships, maybe somebody there, really trying to look at where are the resources and how can you actually get them to also be part of that. So that mindset of not just blaming the resources, but the mindset of like, hey, how do I figure out a way to bring resources here? Like, look, you're showing up here, how amazing that is. You did Watson Fellowship, you did all these other things that is actually increasing your capacity to influence people, increasing your influence also, so that you can attract the partners and do those things. So my vote is yes to understanding the reality of lack of resources, and yes to also having a mindset of resourcefulness, trying to figure out, even though if there's no way, because the chances are if you're facing that problem, many other people are facing. So if you solve that, that is a big deal.
Thank you so much. The video connection's a little bit bad, but the voice connection is great, so we can keep going. And if the video becomes a problem, we can always turn off video. Thank you so much, Lodu, for the question. So two things here. How do you, I assume you're probably 35. I have no idea. 35 to 40, maybe 30 to 35. But how have you been able to sustain your own career in change making and just not burn out, or you've burnt out and taken time off? But your advice around change making careers and burnout.
Oh, thank you, Greg, for asking that. There's when I was at Ashoka, we did this study on Ashoka fellows, social entrepreneurs, and then we found that actually a huge amount of them are feeling overwhelmed and burnout, because this drive to create change in the world is very real. It's very real. There's two things I would offer there. I think one thing is that I learned, and I learned through absolute burnout, anxiety, depression stage, health issues. Everything happened while I was in DC, and you cannot change the world if you're unwell. So I've made it a priority to take care of my well-being. That's the number one priority for me. And anytime my well-being is being compromised, yes, maybe one day I'll sacrifice 2 days, but not more than that. So a well mentor means a well job. Like I can perform better if I take care of myself. So to have that distinction was very helpful. And this is also, tools like meditation has been really transformative for me. Meditation, yoga, eating more healthy, exercise. I've gotten into the spiritual also dimension, go to India and like silent retreats, which feels that which feels great to be there and be in silence and really see what my mind and body is going through. So to have the tools is really key, and then to commit to those tools and to find also surround yourself with people who value that. At Changemaker Allies, for example, we always start with a check-in. Hey, how are you coming to this meeting? And it's okay to also not be okay. That is part of, to show up how you are, authentic, not to bury anything and really be inauthentic in that way. So that's what I would say. One is prioritize your well-being, and two, find the tools that work for you. I'm not saying you find meditation, okay? But try it. Try many different tools until you find something that actually works for you. That's important, whatever that is.
And for people, regardless if they're entry, mid-level, or senior level, because I've worked mostly for decent organizations and my own, but where it's not burn you out at any cost. So what is your advice for people who are thinking about job or consulting opportunities, how to vet that opportunity? Because often things sound great on paper, and then you could take a position, and sometimes I've quit jobs that's been more me than them, but it's like your advice, because a lot of organizations say wonderful things, and this is one of the things I've always wanted to research. I don't know if I will, but around peace building or social entrepreneurship organizations, how much do these institutions practice what they preach internally? All the things they share. So, but I'm curious, like, for your advice for anyone who's vetting an opportunity, how to, make sure you're not going to be in an organization that's just going to make you work 80 hours a week, or, the boss is crazy, or any thoughts on that?
Oh my goodness. I still have to find the ideal working spot or the ideal client. And I think I've made peace with the fact that there will always be challenges at work, with clients, with teams, with all of these things. And I've made the commitment to have an approach that is helpful to the situation. So it's helpful. I try to see, notice, and this is part of being a change maker. You notice a challenge, and then how do you actually go from that challenge into a solution? What does that journey look like? And that's where I feel like change makers, like, you don't just complain, like, my boss is criminal doing all these things. You try to change something. If it doesn't work, maybe look, can you do something different to change? And then if you see that you're getting actively resisted towards this change, then you say, like, is this where I want to be? Like, is this where I want to contribute? So I give everybody a chance. Like, if it's a good opportunity and they value me, for who I am, and I'm very clear on what I have to offer, that job description, just ask questions like, when people say "and others jobs," like, oh, what does that mean? What other jobs could there be? Just to kind of set some expectations and try to understand what your role is. And then, yes, to trying new things and adding new perspectives to that. But at the same time, you don't want to negotiate. If it's not negotiate, endure. Like, it's actually a quick example. I ended up consulting for a team that was not my fit at all, and that led me to actually question my self-worth. Because I'm like, oh, well, I'm not good enough anymore. They're working in this way and they don't listen, and all these things. And I try to give ideas and all these things. And I'm like, am I good enough? That's where that lands, and then that leads to burnout, that leads to exhaustion, and whatever the pay is, of course, we have to figure out pay. But once I found a team that actually was the opposite, very welcoming, understanding where my strengths are and supporting, it's so much more joyous and so much better to work with, and you can do so much more fulfillment in life, because it's not all just salary, right?
Yeah, great tips. I mean, I've burnt out many times and also worked with a lot of people who've burnt out. And I think change making is wonderful, but if, and I've been workaholic, I'm much less workaholic than I used to be. I'm addicted to pickleball and walking and exercise and playing soccer with my son and, lots of other things. But it is a real danger, and is also even more challenging. I mean, Colombia is filled with challenges, and but it's like if you're from or living in a country where the challenges are immense structurally or economically or displacement, it's even, it's one thing to do the job where you get to go home, but it's another thing where if you're from the community or context where, it's really difficult for people not to burn out. So two questions, I'll move on to the ASU thing. So I've done a lot of facilitation. I've been trained in facilitation multi ways. I have my own favorites. But for people, because you're talking about facilitation, and again, I agree that often with groups, whether it's just, hey, let's plan a board meeting, or let's plan something in the community, or let's have a difficult challenge, or do something, often having the right kind of facilitation can make a really positive difference. But it's really hard if one wants to become more of a facilitator, like, what are your recommendations? And there's mediation, dialogue, there's all sorts of cooperative problem solving. For someone who's like, this is cool, how do I start building those skills? Any favorite trainings? Does Changemaker Allies do something? Online things, books, podcasts? And you have to a lot learn by doing, and often having others who can guide you. But if like, where do you start?
As a, that question I also ask my guest. I have a podcast called Facilitating Change, and it's focused on interviewing facilitators. and how do they do what they do, and when I asked them the question, so how does one learn, how did you learn to be a facilitator, there was always an answer: I got to witness someone facilitate, and I said, wow, I want to do that too. And it does feel like this is one of those cases of apprenticeship. You want to actually be an apprentice to someone who's doing great. I've had the fortune of being an apprentice to many Ashoka incredible facilitators, just be in their session, help them co-lead, organize. And then I came to a point that, those facilitators also eventually will put you into a role where you will facilitate. So that's where I feel like it's the best way to learn. And another insight I'm having is that facilitation is what leaders do. Sometimes we forget about this, but like strong CEOs or presidents of boards of our government, unless it's dictatorship, uh, all they do is actually facilitate, because they're dealing with these dynamics and they're navigating those dynamics in a way that actually makes the process of change, makes the process of implementing something easier. So that is an incredible skill. I do feel like it is one of those in 21st century skill. People talk about that, a 21st century skill. I feel like this is a 22nd skill that learning how to facilitate can actually open a lot of doors in your work, in your school, in anywhere. If you learn how to bring people together and help them unlock their wisdom, to create, to bring clarity, to align, to innovate, I feel like that is really needed in teams, in our lives, in our families, everywhere.
And then going back to, let's say, I mean, there's lots of good books, trainings, but let's say someone doesn't have access. I mean, often you can find a mentor, someone will help you start doing it and reflect. But if someone's like, I don't know where to start, and I just want to, like, one, please check out the podcast, but any other like online training courses, favorite book, newsletter, tool on the internet, or product that you find incredibly useful?
Amazing. There's so many. There's so many. There's depends if you're a social entrepreneur. Check out what Greg Van Kirk is doing. It's really
Mm-hmm.
fascinating. He's an Ashoka fellow. He has this book called "It's What You Set in Motion," and it's really good about collaborative change making. How
Mm-hmm.
do you do those with activities, with tools, with videos, with everything? There's Priya Parker. There's this book called "The Art of Gathering." Really
Mm-hmm.
good way to actually think about the intentionality of the space. Check out the Sacred Design Lab if you like to, like maybe have more internal changes. And this is part of our facilitation methodology too, is that when we are facilitating, it's not just about externally, it's also about internal dimension, relationship with ourselves, and then there's relationship with others, and then there's about creating action that is external. So we touched the three dimensions. Sacred Design Lab is one. There's also togetherness practice. Vipin Thak, he was my facilitator teacher. So there's a good amount of resources out there. If you need help to sort, please let me know. You just gotta know, what type do you want, and how you can support with that. One thing I want to plug in very quick: if you want to learn how to facilitate communities, learning communities, we are hosting a workshop sometime, I think the December 7th, on we have an online free workshop. If you want to join with the Changemaker Allies, just let me know, and I can share more info on that, because that's also a type of facilitation that we all do in that regard.
Okay. So we're coming close. We have a couple of minutes left. So I put these things here, and also I'll go into the show notes. One question before we get to wrapping up, and also ASU, for, let's say, people you talk to now around the world, regard any other skills you recommend, you know, that they consider advancing or developing, whether it's informal education on their own, just saying, like, if you, for people who want to work at this intersection of leadership, facilitation, and social impact, the nature of the world is changing so fast for not everybody. So any other things that you see are going to be more critical potentially in the years to come?
Hmm. To me, is I'm gonna respond that with a question, and the
Mm-hmm.
question is, when Gandhi said, "Be the change you want to see,"
Mm-hmm.
he didn't say do the change, right? He said be the change. So
Mm-hmm.
I ask you all to reflect on what does that mean to you? What does it mean to be the change? And that can be maybe a sense of compassion. It can be like I want to be full of life. I want to be supportive. Whatever those qualities are, be those qualities,
Mm-hmm.
because in the future it's I feel like we have been stuck because we've been focused a lot on the doing and very much less on the being. And that is, I feel like, a quality you must hone in, is what does it mean to be the change for you, and how you can bring that into your life. That is
Mm-hmm.
a really important aspect of who you are. That is a very important value add that you will bring to the world. So hone on that. That is the skill that I feel like few people talk. Of course, you can do AI and you can do public speaking and communication and all of those, but the most important skill is to be yourself in a way that you are being the change.
Mm-hmm. Right, which sometimes is easier said than done, and sometimes not. So two questions, and then we'll start to wrap up. One is for people interested in Changemaker Allies, the type of consulting services training. What else? And you talked about the workshop that'll be in the show notes. But what type of clients do you take on? Do you ever look for other consultants? And how do people find out more about the things you're offering?
Mm. So for us is we are your allies in how do you hold space and how can you evolve the way you're holding space. Whether it is you have a fellowship, whether you have a community of grantees, whether you have students, young change makers, conferences, whatever space that you're holding, we have some really powerful people and methodologies that we curate, customize to your needs. So we find that when we're facilitating, it's hard to have one size fits all. So whether it is a fellowship, a community design, we're here for you. We also are building capacity building for facilitating skills inside the organization. So if you feel like your team needs more people who can be facilitators, we're happy to help and design something uniquely to your team. Some quick ways we can start working together is we also do assessment of spaces. So if you need to actually get an external perspective on how transformative are your spaces right now, and get recommendations on how to take them to the next level, we offer that offering as well. We're also seeing this huge issue around alumni and engaging
Mm-hmm.
alumni successfully, and we've created some really good models. We've worked with some organizations that we have revamped how they are engaging their alumni network. So we have things like that, and you can find us on Changemaker Allies or just hit us up on LinkedIn, and we'd be happy to chat and learn your needs, because I feel like that is the value we bring. It's not one size fits all, is also customized to your needs, and we do it together. So we co-create, co-lead, co-design, so it is a collaborative process, that and it's going to be seamless for you to integrate, to innovate, and to implement.
I mean, these are all critical things. And I've done a lot of work with, as professor and other things on alumni programs, also as a consultant. And it's so important, regardless if you have a community, like how do you build, can't say lifelong engagement, but enough engagement for people to see the benefit of participating in the ways they feel comfortable with, whether it's in person or on different platforms. And you can't just do one size fits all. And it often needs like the network curator. And it's not about technology; it's often about the human aspect. But
Amen,
so,
amen to that.
can you say a little bit about Arizona State University, and in terms of being a global futurist, like Are you, both you and the School of Global Futures, are you looking for partners? You're looking for students, faculty, or, and obviously this could be a 10-hour podcast in itself, but what are some of the most exciting things the school is doing?
So I think the most interesting point that I want to emphasize is that we are on a hunt for students who are change makers. We have some very innovative degrees, such as in sustainability, in innovation in society, which is very much social entrepreneurship type of degree. You have a degree in food systems, in oceans futures, in complex adaptive system. If you're a math whiz and you want to learn biomimicry and the magic of nature and how to create models to understand those things better, we have very incredible degrees, and we are looking for change makers, young change makers, to join these programs. Now, to get to those change makers, we are forming these partnerships with youth serving organizations, whether they can nominate their students to join the college, or they can also reach out to us, and we're happy to hold webinars on supporting change makers to choose careers that are meaningful to them. So we're doing webinars, nominations, and all the students that get to join, they get $5,000 towards their venture, which is really nice to have that type of funding. If you have an idea to make happen, if you want to travel to see Craig in Colombia, you can use those funds to actually explore and do those things. So that's what we're looking for, students and for partners to make this happen. We're also an ecosystem of businesses, researchers, and government and NGOs. We have some incredible initiatives at the Global Futures Lab at ASU, and I encourage everybody that is in these fields of making our future world, starting to build that future that we know it's possible. We're here to help. We're here to collaborate. Just reach out to us. Happy to chat and explore those opportunities.
Okay, wonderful. And again, I put the link to ASU and it'll be in the show notes. So last two questions quickly. So we'll wrap up. What are you currently working on learning or upskilling? It doesn't have to do anything to do with work. And then the other question, any favorite movie, book, show, podcast that is occupying your mind in a good way that again, doesn't have to have anything to do with work, that you might encourage others to take a look at?
What I'm upscaling right now, it's my online marketing skills. I do feel like, how do we create authentic connections online without sounding or being too salesy? That is something I'm tired of, just random messages and like sales tactics to brainwash you. I want authentic marketing to find the right people to work with, and that's something I'm learning to grow, which feels, and I'm open. If anybody has any suggestions, please let me know. So that's something I'm learning to do and grow into. As far as books, I would recommend a book that is about being the change, and it's called The Power of Now. It is by Eckhart Tolle. It's a book that invites you to be present and to really explore what it means to be present. And I feel like when you are that, you're really a present for all the people around you. So that is a great book that I recommend to everybody to get started into this inner journey of growth. Oh, Craig, I lost you. I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh no, I was on mute. I was on mute. I was on mute. Sorry. So we're going to start wrapping up. Thank you so much for taking time out of your almost evening to share your wisdom, resources, questions, and just inquisitiveness. And thank you again for people joining us with the live stream and also with the podcast episode. And as we started off, 3 quick requests. Please think about rating and sharing the podcast and check out the other 170 episodes. Please follow Mentor on LinkedIn. Check out Arizona State University and the School of Global Futures. Check out Changemaker Allies and check out PCDN. We have a whole bunch of other great podcasts coming up actually before the end of the year, so stay tuned. And there was some video challenges. So for anyone who's watching the live stream, like the sound is great, the video is not perfect, but for the audio, it'll be fine. And again, everything Mentor talked about in terms of resources, I hope they'll all be captured in the show notes. So if you miss something, don't stress out. So thank you so much and have a great evening in Kosovo, afternoon.